I'm delighted to say that joining me now is the football writer Simon Harrison. He's been across. Simon, you've watched a lot of games this weekend, haven't you? Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Pleasure to be on this morning. And yeah, I've had a bit of an FA Cup and the Liga overload this weekend. You can definitely say that much.
Yeah, what was your favourite game of the weekend, Simon?
Um, that's a tough one. I would say probably the Lincoln against Burnley, obviously with the whole cup set, magic of the FA Cup. It's something that you're not really used to seeing in Spanish football. Obviously, the format of the Copa del Rey doesn't lend itself to upsets. So it's always nice to see someone from the lower tiers managing to get one over on a top flight team, I'd say.
For someone who isn't as informed about the Spanish league as you are, why don't they have the same type of upsets as the English league?
Well, basically, the Copa del Rey is sort of just based around a two-legged format, so it doesn't lend itself to teams being able to kind of. There's no real benefit to a team such as in the second or third division hosting one of the top teams like Real Madrid or Barcelona. Obviously, it does wonders in terms of gate receipts, but there's always a second leg. So these teams like Real Madrid, Atletico, or whoever it may be, they can kind of afford to put out a weakened team to allow their managers to kind of rotate their personnel nicely. And they've always got the safety of knowing that they can play these minnows in their own ground. And well, even if they were to lose 3-0 in the first leg, I mean, in the English format of the FA Cup, that'd be good enough to take them through. But in Spain, they've always got the safety of knowing that they can play in front of their own fans and score some ridiculous kind of score lines and turn things around, even if a team in, say, the third tier or the second tier managed to pull off a really unexpected, like, big result on their own patch.
Well, we did see that massive result in English football with Lincoln beating Burnley. Of course, there was also a bit of surprise of Millwall beating Leicester, albeit Leicester haven't been performing at all well this season. Let's just have a quick look at the draw. It's Chelsea versus Manchester United. That's, of course, the standout tie. Middlesbrough versus Huddersfield on Manchester City. Tottenham against Millwall. Sutton United or Arsenal versus Lincoln. Just quickly, we're not expecting any upset between Sutton and Arsenal, are we? Surely they're going to bounce back from that humiliating defeat against Bayern, aren't they?
I mean, you'd think so, and I would probably think that Wenger obviously likes to give young players an opportunity, but I think he sort of needs to stamp out the current situation that they're in, where there's a lot of criticism about him and whether people sort of think he should step down at the end of the year. Obviously, there's a lot being made of the fact it's on the 3G pitch, but it's nothing that Arsenal haven't dealt with before. They're not aliens playing on that kind of surface, so it should really be a win for Arsenal. I mean, I'm always one to root for the underdog. It'd be nice to see another sort of upset and someone else thrown in. But at the same time, it would be nice to see Arsenal go through and play against Lincoln, because I'm sure that's the tie that probably Lincoln would have been hoping for going into it.
Yeah, I think you'd be very disappointed if you're Lincoln and you end up playing Sutton in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. It might mean that you go through to the semis, or you might think you've got more of a chance, but still, I think you'd be a little bit frustrated. Of course, Danny Welbeck isn't going to play in Monday's game because of that plastic pitch, because of the 3G pitch. They think it's better for him to recover from his injury if he doesn't play on that. But you'd have thought on that type of pitch that with the style of football Arsenal play that they should just be able to absolutely batter Sutton. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's Sportuccino. Now let's go back to talking a bit about Spanish football, because you are a Spanish football expert, and talking about a former player who did play in the Premier League in the FA Cup was Gareth Bale. He made his first appearance for Real Madrid after a 3-month injury layoff. How did he look for you, Simon?
Well, I think what's good is that Bale he's come back in. Obviously, like you say, it's been quite a long injury layoff with an ankle problem, and he's readily admitted after playing that he's sort of not playing at 100%. But for him to come into the game and to make an immediate impact, score a goal that you would say is sort of a trademark Bale goal, showing a bit of pace and power to get into the box and then finishing across the goalkeeper from the left-hand side. It's good signs for Zidane, because recently Ronaldo's been turning a bit more provider. Benzema, he's been quite hit and miss. Morata has taken the chances when he's been given them, but there isn't that sort of imperious sense that you get with Barcelona, where you think that their trident is going to have that game-defining contribution. So it's definitely good for them to get him in. He's almost like a new signing, really. He's been out that long. And given the fact that Real Madrid, they've got quite a bit of fixture congestion coming up, they've got a couple of matches to catch up on in La Liga. It's good to get that body back, and obviously someone of that quality, it's fantastic to be able to call upon him again. He says himself that he'll probably be back fully fit for sort of mid-March, but he can still contribute at the highest level up until then. They've just kind of got to be careful with when they use him and for how long, because he has admitted that maybe he's not feeling at his sort of imperious best, because he's kind of holding himself back almost if he wants to go for certain runs, try certain sprints, that kind of thing. But obviously, it's just absolutely huge to have him back, and he should really solidify the lead that they've got at the top of La Liga, and they should be looking to kick on and make the most of the 2-game advantage that they've got at the moment over Barcelona in second place.
Yeah, they need to really kick on from there. And one of the players who was instrumental in that victory over Espanyol, that 2-0 win, was Isco. He got 2 assists in that game. Now, he made comments afterwards saying he might have to consider his future elsewhere away from the Bernabeu if he doesn't play enough first-team football. Do you expect him to leave the Bernabeu, do you think?
I think it's a tough one. I mean, he's admitted himself that he would like to stay and he could see himself staying many years. But obviously, first and foremost, he's got to think of himself. And while Zidane has done well to keep all of these sort of egos in line and to keep Isco and the likes of James and Alvaro Morata quiet and able to contribute off the bench whenever they're called upon, at the same time, I think it'll be hard to sort of maintain that for more than one season, because they can kind of put their egos and their desires to one side for the team for 1 year, and if it wins some silverware, then great. But I think with Isco's comments, you can see that these players, they can't really commit to having more than a year of that without either being unhappy themselves, or it having a sort of a detrimental effect on their career. So I could definitely see him moving on. I think it might make sense for him most as a player, given the system that Real Madrid use. But obviously, I think Florentino Perez will sort of be wary of the fact that they will need to sign quite big to replace someone like Isco, because he's clearly like a great player. He can offer something a little bit different that maybe the rest of Real Madrid's squad sort of lacks.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Of course, it's looking pretty good for Real Madrid right now, but it's not looking very good for Barcelona, Luis Enrique. They had that big defeat to Paris Saint-Germain last week in the Champions League, and you'd have thought a game against Leganés would be one where they'd absolutely come back, batter them, and kind of be back to the great Barcelona, that MSN, everything like that. But it wasn't quite as simple as that, was it, Simon?
I mean, they kind of needed Lionel Messi to pull himself out of a tough situation once again. Obviously, the only person who was lacking getting on the score sheet that game was Neymar, so the MS was there. But it is disappointing, obviously, as you say, at Camp Nou, they'll be expecting to sort of blow someone like Leganés out of the water. It didn't quite happen that way. Obviously, the 3 points are great in a week where Luis Enrique has received quite a lot of criticism from the media and fans alike. But Leganés, they've only scored, I think, 16 goals this season in the league, which is absolutely crazy considering the 22, 23 games that they've played. But they are well organised. They're willing to frustrate and play on the counter. So you can see teams playing with that sort of mentality and system, having a bit of luck against Barcelona, especially away from home. But you would expect them to kind of open up the gap a bit sooner than in the 90th minute and needing a penalty to sort of do it. So while it is probably just best that they've picked up the 3 points and they've got the result after, as you say, that resounding defeat against PSG in the Champions League, it's kind of papering over the cracks once again, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, well, it's looking a bit better for Atletico Madrid now. I think they're on an 8-game winning run. They got a 5-minute hat-trick from Kevin Gamero in their 4-1 win away. Sevilla also winners. They're looking good ahead. Both of those sides are looking good ahead of their Champions League games this week, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. And I think one big boost for Atletico will be the fact that Jan Oblak, he's back fit for the Champions League. He's been out for quite a while now. I think he's missed about 15 games with sort of a shoulder problem. And Moya, in his absence, hasn't been the most convincing goal. So I think having that foundation should be huge for Diego Simeone. And also the fact that Sevilla are playing against Leicester, who, as we all know, have struggled in the Premier League and also got knocked out by Millwall in the FA Cup this weekend. So I would say it's looking good for the Spanish teams heading into the Champions League. It's not ideal for Barcelona, but the rest of the Spanish clubs that are involved, everything's looking quite rosy for them, I'd say, and they should all be quite confident of going through to the next round of the competition.
It's been so good to get your thoughts this morning, Simon. Just before you go, why don't you let us know where we can find you on social media and anything else you'd like to promote, please?
Well, you can find me tweeting about mainly Spanish football. Obviously, there's room for other bits of football, but football's pretty much what you're going to get from me. And you can find me at Simon H Football. Also with the same tag on Facebook. And that's pretty much where I'll put all of my articles, any thoughts during or after games, any little bits here and there that I find interesting. And yeah, Twitter's definitely the place to find me. So if you're interested, then definitely do that after the show.
Superb. Well, check it out. Simon Harrison, football writer, thank you so much for being on Sportuccino this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.